Right now, somewhere in your body, there is a craving. Maybe it's sugar. Maybe it's salt. Maybe it's the specific, stupid pull of bread. The smell of it. The way you'll eat a slice standing up in the kitchen without ever deciding to. You didn't choose that. Nobody taught you that. So here's the question this video is actually about. Not what did ancient humans eat? That's the easy version. The real question is stranger. Why do you still want what they wanted? Because the answer isn't in your fridge. It's in a cave in South Africa. It's in a Neanderthal's teeth. It's in a gene that's been sitting in your mouth for 800,000 years, waiting. Your cravings are not random. They are memories. And most of what you've been told about them is wrong. Start with a skull. In 1959, in Olduvai Gorge, Tanzania, Mary Leakey pulls a skull out of the ground that doesn't look like ours. Enormous flat molars, a jaw built like a vice, a crest of bone running along the top of the head, an anchor for chewing muscles powerful enough to work through anything. They call him Nutcracker Man, Paranthropus boisei, around 1.8 million years old. And for 50 years, everyone reads the obvious story straight off the bone. Look at that jaw. He's cracking nuts. He's grinding seeds. He's crushing the hardest food on the savannah. Because look at the equipment. Then, in 2011, a team led by Thor Serling and Matt Sponheimer runs carbon isotope analysis on the tooth enamel of 22 individuals and publishes it in the journal PNAS. Nutcracker Man was not cracking nuts. Roughly 77% of his diet was grasses and sedges. Not seeds, not nuts. Grass. Chemically, his diet was almost indistinguishable from a zebra's, from a warthog's, from a hippo's. He had the jaw of a nutcracker and the diet of a lawnmower. And that is the first thing to understand before anything else in this video. You cannot read a diet off of anatomy.
For half a century, the most confident story in the field was built on a shape, and the chemistry demolished it. Hold on to that, because the field is about to do it again, to itself and to a story you have almost certainly been sold. Here's the story everyone knows. Our ancestors started eating meat. Meat was dense, meat was fuel, meat freed us from chewing all day. And on that fuel, the brain exploded. Meat made us human. It's in documentaries, it's on the back of the protein powder, it's the entire foundation of the modern paleo diet. And the evidence looked good. At Dakika in Ethiopia, Shannon McFerrin's team reports bones with cut marks, defleshing marks, marrow extraction marks, dated to around 3.4 million years ago, in Nature in 2010. That's before our genus even exists. That's Lucy's world. At Nyanga in Kenya, Thomas Plummer's team publishes in Science in 2023. Oldowan stone tools, roughly 2.9 million years old. Hundreds of artifacts, nearly 1,800 animal bones. Butchered hippopotamus, the oldest known butchery of a megafauna animal anywhere on Earth. Somebody, 3 million years ago, was standing over a hippo carcass with a sharp rock.
So the meat story holds, right? Then, in 2022, a study drops in PNAS, Andrew Barr, Brianna Pobiner, and colleagues, and it does something quietly devastating. They pull together the data from 9 research areas across Eastern Africa, 59 site levels, spanning 2.6 to 1.2 million years ago. And yes, after Homo erectus shows up, the number of cut-marked bones goes up. That's the famous spike. That's the moment meat made us human. But then they check something nobody had checked properly. How hard were we digging? Because paleoanthropologists don't search randomly. They go back again and again to the places that already gave them fossils. Olduvai, the same rich beds. And the deposits from right around Homo erectus have been excavated far, far more intensively than the ones before. When you correct for sampling effort, for how much dirt we actually moved, the spike vanishes. There is no sustained increase in evidence for meat eating after Homo erectus. The meat didn't surge, our attention did. And underneath that is a bias that quietly warps this entire field. Bones survive, plants
rot. Stone tools sit in the ground for 3 million years. A handful of roasted tubers turns to nothing. So when we dig up the past, we dig up a butcher's shop, and we conclude our ancestors lived in one. They didn't. Because when the plants do survive, they change everything. Border Cave, South Africa. In 2020, Lynn Wadley's team publishes in Science 55 charred rhizomes, the underground stems of a plant called hypoxis, the yellow starflower, carried back to the cave, roasted in the ash. They are 170,000 years old. Starch, cooked deliberately and shared around a fire 170,000 years ago. Shanidar Cave in Iraq. In 2022, Seren Kabukchu's team publishes charred food fragments in the journal Antiquity, actual remains of actual meals from Neanderthal layers around 70,000 years old. And this is not a lump of scorched meat, it's a dish. Wild pulses, peas, vetch, grass pea, pounded, soaked, mixed with wild grasses, and remarkably, with mustard. Mustard adds no calories. Mustard is not survival. Mustard is flavor. Neanderthals, the brutes, the punchline, the cavemen, were pounding pulses, soaking them to draw out the bitterness, and seasoning them. They were cooking to taste. And then the one that breaks the timeline entirely. Shubeika 1 in northeastern Jordan. 2018 PNAS, Amaya Aron's Otegi and Tobias Richter. Charred crumbs in a fireplace. Wild einkorn, barley, oats, and club rush tuber, ground into flour, mixed with water, baked flat on hot stone. Bread, 14,400 years old, which is roughly 4,000 years before agriculture. Read that again. We were not farmers who invented bread. We were hunter-gatherers who invented bread. And some researchers now think the bread came first and the farming came after. Because once you have tasted it, you want more of it than the wild will give you. We may have domesticated wheat because we couldn't stop eating bread. Now here's where the story stops being about them and starts being about you. There's a gene called AMY1. It codes for salivary amylase, the enzyme in your spit that breaks starch into sugar. It is the reason that if you chew a piece of plain bread long enough, it slowly turns sweet in your mouth. That's not the bread, that's you. The old assumption was tidy. We got extra copies of that gene because of farming. Agriculture gave us grain. Grain selected for starch-digesting genes. Done. In 2024, a team including Omer Gökçemen published in Science, resolving that stretch of DNA properly for the first time. The duplications go back as far as 800,000 years. Hunter-gatherers 45,000 years ago already carried multiple copies. Neanderthals carried them. Denisovans carried them. The machinery for loving starch was already installed, long before the first field was ever planted. Farming didn't create the appetite. Farming found it and turned the volume up. So when you stand in your kitchen at midnight and tear a piece off a loaf you weren't planning to eat, that is not weakness. That is an 800,000-year-old enzyme doing exactly what it was built to do. Now, fat. There's a phenomenon Arctic explorers wrote about, and it has a blunt name: rabbit starvation. You can eat lean meat all day, rabbit, lean game, and starve to death while your stomach is full, because protein without enough fat or carbohydrate overwhelms your liver's ability to process it. You get weaker, you get sicker, and you die with meat in your belly. Lean meat is not a diet.
Fat is the prize, and our ancestors knew it with an intensity that is genuinely hard to look at. Neumark Nord in Germany, July 2025, Science Advances. Lutz Kindler, Will Robrooks, and colleagues. 125,000 years ago, Neanderthals hauled the remains of at least 172 large animals, deer, horses, aurochs, to one small patch of ground beside the water, barely 50 square meters. And there, they smashed the bones. Not to get at the marrow. Marrow's easy.
They smashed them into tens of thousands of fragments, and then they boiled them for hours to render out the grease. A fat factory, industrial-scale rendering. And here's the kicker. This behavior was supposed to be a modern human invention from something like 28,000 years ago. The Neanderthals were doing it 100,000 years earlier. They were not brutes tearing at raw flesh. They were running a production line for fat. You want to know why butter tastes like that? Why fat coats your tongue and something in your skull goes yes? You are the descendant of people who boiled 172 animals' bones to get it.
Now, this is where most videos hand you a clean line. Fire, at exactly this date, at exactly this cave, and cooking gave us our brains. I'm going to be straight with you, because this is one of the most overstated claims in popular prehistory. You'll hear that Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, around 1 million years ago, is the oldest evidence of human fire. It's a real important site. Burned bone and ashed plant material found genuinely in place, published in PNAS in 2012. But it isn't cleanly the oldest, and it isn't a settled crown. There are older claims that are shakier. There's Gesher Benot Yaakov around 780,000 years, with burnt seeds and wood clustered where hearths might have been. And the earliest fires nobody argues about, regular, controlled, habitual hearths, come much later, at places like Kesem Cave, a few 100,000 years ago. Which matters, because the famous idea sitting on top of all this, Richard Wrangham's argument that cooking made us human, that cooked food is pre-digested food, that it shrank our guts and paid for our expensive brains, is a genuinely good hypothesis that is not a proven fact.
The gut versus brain trade-off it leans on has been challenged. A 2011 study in Nature, looking across a large sample of mammals, couldn't find the negative correlation the theory predicts. And the timeline is awkward. To power the rise of Homo erectus nearly 2 million years ago, we'd need secure evidence of controlled fire that far back, and we don't have it. Cooking almost certainly mattered enormously. When it started mattering, and how much, is still an open fight. Anyone who tells you otherwise is selling you a tidier past than the one that exists. Alcohol. There's a hypothesis from Robert Dudley at Berkeley called the drunken monkey, and the logic is beautiful. Fruit falls, fruit ripens, wild yeast gets into the sugar and starts producing ethanol, and ethanol is volatile. It carries. It travels on the air, far further than the fruit itself. So for a primate, the smell of alcohol is not the smell of a drug, it's a beacon. It means over there, ripe, sugar, calories, go. And the primates that were drawn to that smell and could actually process what they found ate better. Here's the evidence that gives it teeth.
Around 10 million years ago, in our lineage, an enzyme called ADH4 picked up a mutation that made us dramatically better at metabolizing ethanol. 10 million years. Long before beer, long before farming, long before anything you'd call a civilization. And in 2022, Christina Campbell's team published in Royal Society Open Science, wild spider monkeys in Panama eating fermenting fruit at 1 to 2% alcohol and metabolizing it measurably. So your relationship with alcohol wasn't invented in a tavern. It's a very old navigation system, calibrated for dilute ethanol arriving bundled inside fruit, alongside fiber and water and sugar. And then we learned to distill it. We took a signal that meant food is nearby and turned it into 40% in a glass with nothing attached. Here's the version you know. Humans started drinking milk, and so evolution gave us the ability to digest it. Cause, then effect. Simple. In 2022, a huge study in Nature, Richard Evershed at Bristol, Mark Thomas at UCL, looked at nearly 7,000 animal fat residues from 13,000 pottery fragments across 550 European sites.
And then at ancient DNA from more than 1,700 skeletons. The residues say Europeans were drinking milk from the very beginning of farming, around 9,000 years ago. The DNA says the gene for digesting it as an adult, lactase persistence, didn't become common until roughly the late Bronze Age, thousands of years later. So for thousands of years, people were drinking milk that they could not properly digest, and they kept doing it anyway. Which means the simple story is dead. Drinking milk did not, by itself, drive the gene. What did? When the researchers modeled it, the thing that predicted selection wasn't how much milk people drank. It was the signature of famine and disease, crashing populations, crowded settlements, hunger. Because here's the grim mechanism. If you're healthy and lactose intolerant, milk gives you a bad day. If you're starving or sick and lactose intolerant, the diarrhea it causes can kill you. So the gene didn't spread in the good times, it spread in the catastrophes, when milk was the only food left and the people who couldn't handle it died. Your ability to drink a glass of milk without consequence is not a gift from cows.
It's what's left after the famines. One honest caveat, that data set is European. The African and Asian stories are still being written. So we farm, and bodies in the ground tell us what it cost. Across the transition to agriculture, again and again you see the same marks. Teeth rotting, cavities explode when a diet turns starchy and soft. Bodies shrinking. A 2021 study of prehistoric Europeans found early farmers were shorter than their own genes predicted they should be. And you see infection and the wear of relentless labor in early farming towns like Çatalhöyük. This is where Jared Diamond's famous line comes from: farming as the worst mistake in the history of the human race. But the modern picture is more interesting than the slogan, and I want to give you the honest version. There's a trap in bioarchaeology called the osteological paradox. Sometimes a skeleton covered in disease markers isn't a sign of a sicker population. It can be a sign that person survived long enough to develop them. The healthiest looking bones can belong to people who died too fast to show damage. And the rotting teeth link isn't universal. It depends heavily on what's actually being eaten.
So the truth is not that farming was a mistake, it's a trade. Farming was a catastrophe for a great many individual bodies, and simultaneously the most successful thing our species ever did, because it produced people in enormous numbers, which is why you exist. We bought the future without teeth. Which brings us back to your kitchen. The popular explanation for modern obesity is the thrifty gene. The idea from James Neal in 1962 that famine selected for genes that hoard fat, and now, in a world of plenty, those genes are killing us. It's a great story. The evidence has largely abandoned it. John Speakman at Aberdeen has argued the math doesn't work. Famines were too rare and too indiscriminate to drive that kind of selection. And when you look at the genome, you don't find the fingerprints of strong selection at obesity genes. Some of them even look selected for leanness. And the other favorite explanation, we just sit around more than they did, has a problem too. Herman Poncer measured it. He went and measured total daily energy expenditure in the Hadza in Tanzania, who walk enormous distances, dig, climb, hunt, and forage for their food.
And when you adjust for body size, they burn about the same number of calories per day as you do. Not more, about the same. Your body is not running a smaller engine than a hunter-gatherer's. That's not where the difference is. The difference is what's going into it. In 2019, Kevin Hall at the NIH ran the experiment properly. 20 adults locked in a metabolic ward so nothing could be fudged. 2 diets, one ultra-processed, one unprocessed, matched for calories, sugar, fat, fiber, salt. Matched. And people were told, eat as much as you want. On the ultra-processed diet, they ate 508 extra calories a day and gained weight. Same food on paper, different food in the body. That's the whole thing right there. Not weak will, not broken genes. An ancient appetite meeting food engineered to exploit it. And one last caveat, because it matters. The Hadza are not living fossils. They are a modern people in a modern world with trade and neighbors and a marginal landscape. They tell us about human physiology,
They are not a photograph of the Stone Age, and anyone who uses them that way is lying to you. So, back to that craving, the one that was sitting in you when this video started. You want fat, because your ancestors boiled 172 animals to get it. You want starch, because there's an enzyme in your spit that's older than our species, and it has been waiting 800,000 years for a loaf of bread. You want the sweetness and the salt, because every one of those was once a signal that said, this is rare, this is rich, this will keep you alive. Take it now, because next week there may be nothing. Every one of those signals was true. Here's the thing nobody tells you. Your body isn't broken. Your body is right. It is running a perfectly accurate map of a world that no longer exists. You are not fighting your appetite. You are fighting 3 million years of it being correct.